Larry Birnbaum earned a PhD from computer science at Yale in 1986. I think that puts him ahead of his time. He joined the faculty at Northwestern in 1989, where he's currently a professor of computer science and journalism. He's also the chief scientific advisor at Narrative Science. If you don't know them, they're the makers of Quill, which is an artificial intelligence platform that turns structured data into actionable stories and insights. Larry said he will show us some examples of automatically generated stories, but his larger theme is how to apply human editorial judgment at scale. Larry, are you ready to come up here? Your PowerPoint should be on this laptop, and Ian will help you with that.
Yep. Hello. Well, anyway, look. Yeah, let's go. So here's the story, and we're not going to be able to do so much of the live animation, not that there's that much of that, but this is an example of a story that is written from data. It's a story, and you won't see the data, but the data are from a hockey game played actually in Texas, and this is a story that's generated automatically by that. Okay, good. And of course, more than sports, we do business stories. So some of you may have seen the stories we do for Forbes.com. We do quarterly earnings previews based on data. We have experimented with medical stories. So this is a story generated from what's called an adverse events diary, which is kept from patients who are being tested in drug tests. I'm trying to get too flustered by everything that's gone wrong. Okay, cool. Civic data. So this was actually something I think people here would be more interested in as well. These are data from that we did a project with ProPublica where they helped us. Well, they did all the work really to get the data for 52,000 schools in the United States, and we wrote 52,000 stories with them about each and every one of these schools. Basically, the editorial angle on these, and we'll talk about that in a minute, were highlighted the relationship between the academic achievement of the students in these schools and their socioeconomic background. And in fact, in order to highlight that point, what we did is we chose schools nearby that had rather different socioeconomic backgrounds and compared the academic achievements of their students. That was the point of that kind of story. And actually, I'll take a little license. The company's not really doing this, but this is an experiment that we did where we used unstructured Twitter data around the Republican primaries that we then structured and analyzed to write this story automatically. And I think the first paragraph is a little boring, but the second paragraph I think is pretty cool. While the overall tone of the Gingrich tweets is positive, public opinion regarding the candidate and character issues is trending negatively. And then there was a kind of a cool excerpted tweet that actually illustrated that. Why stories? I don't have to tell you folks this at some level, but, and again, without the animation, it's a little hard to see, but you can show people a chart of data, and you can show people a graph, or you can tell them a story that actually explains to them what it is that they're supposed to be seeing. I was at a big data conference a couple of months ago, and somebody said, and they were quoting, I think it was Chris Anderson saying, the thing about big data is that the data will speak for themselves. I think that's absolutely not true. The data do not speak for themselves. You know, we have to give voice to the data. There are stories in the data, but the data itself, the data themselves are not, in fact, a story. So here's really what we do. We do what we call narrative analytics. We look for big patterns in the data that we think sort of embody humanly understandable themes. Come back, fade, and low-hanging fruit is a good business theme. You know, what's the one thing I can do today to make my life better? And these themes, when you see them when you see them in the data, they kind of make the data real for you. They connect it, they make it coherent, they focus you on what it is that matters to you in those data. And that's really what our software does. As I said, we originally invented this technology at Northwestern in actually about 5 years ago now. With some students, actually some Medill students helped us to build this technology initially, and we were excited when we saw this. We felt we'd forget about profits. This was all the reward we needed. Was an XKCD slide thing, and of course since then the company's gone on to do a great deal of work, primarily in financial data and financial stories. And so, although we do write stories automatically, they're published, some with attribution and some without attribution. Primarily, at this point in the life of the company, we get proprietary data, and we write stories about those proprietary data, and we ship them back to the people who own those data in order to help them understand what they're supposed to be doing. So, for example, and here the point being that we can actually take we can write stories for one person about their portfolio, for example, about their investment portfolio, and we can make them look pretty as they expect them to look. We do a lot of sector reporting, stock market sector reporting, as you would imagine. This is something I think is pretty exciting, actually. We have data from a large fast food franchise company, and we get a lot of point-of-sale data. They're a highly automated company in some ways, and they generate a tremendous amount of data for their store managers who really don't know what to do with it. And so one of the things that we've been doing is experimenting with writing them a story, a weekly tracking report about how their store is doing and comparing how their store is doing compared to stores in their area. And what I like to say about the story is it's really boring unless this is your restaurant, in which case it's really not boring at all. Okay? And actually, one of the things that we learned when we were trying to write these stories were how do we actually give people something, we're starting to think about how to be meta writers. How do we take the structure of a story and sort of blow it out at scale? So what do you want to tell somebody, a busy person, at the end of the story, which is, what's one thing that I should focus on this week that would make my life better? And this was that thing there is from the low-hanging fruit angle. It says find an underperforming high-margin item, underperforming compared to your peer stores, and point it out to this person so that they might think about whether they want to do something about that. We've done work in education based on educational data. Here we're providing a feedback to somebody who's been taking standardized tests. This is something I'm really excited about and proud of. We partner with a company called Game Changer. They generate a tremendous amount of data. If a coach or a parent uses a smartphone to score the game, we get the data and we write a story about it. And so we write all these fantastic Little League stories every summer, every day, really. Here I think I can do a demo, assuming I can. Let's see if this will work here. So we just launched this product, and I want to show it to you. So one thing that the ISOJ folks were kind enough to do was to let me take a look at their Google Analytics data. And so this is from their Google Analytics data. These are reports that we can generate automatically. And by the way, if any of you who have websites and do this kind of analytics, which is probably most of you, please feel free to go to Narrative Science's website and try this thing out for yourself. It's free. And here is the report we generated for last week, which is a good report, as you can see. Things were up. I'm excited to see that visitors seem to be more engaged with your ISOJ panel to explore new tools for journalists, bots, drones, sensors, and wearables. So that's actually pretty exciting. Let me just close this up now. Okay. Thank you. Now I have to find where. Okay. I'm sorry. There we go. Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm such a klutz. So I want to end on my actual sort of larger theme. So the machines that we write, they use editorial judgment to write stories. You cannot take a wall of data and turn it into a wall of text. It requires some editorial judgment to turn it into a story that actually highlights what's important, that makes it real, that makes it meaningful. But if you go up a level, of course, machines are already making a lot of editorial judgments right now in terms of at the level of what do we see, what information do we see, the order in which we see it. And I think there's a really interesting question as to what are the editorial values that underlie these judgments. So these are two machines that are editors right now that a lot of people use. And I guess I want to make the point that I think it would be really great if the editorial algorithms that are being used and that will be being used in the future are actually written in a way that people can actually understand what they're doing. Not only the people who use them, but the people who write them. And I think there's actually a problem sometimes where the engineers who build these things do not necessarily understand the editorial values that underlie their decision making, because it isn't necessarily the case that the parameters that they're taking into account are sort of correspond to humanly recognizable editorial categories. So I think this is actually going to be a big challenge for the future, is how to make these things in some sense accountable, how to make them understandable, how to make them usable, how to make them sort of tweakable by people, adjustable, if not by the people who read the articles that result or read the content that results, at least by the people who are generating that content. So this is sort of a gleam in my eye, but this is something I'd love to be able to build in the future, which is a sort of an interface to help you sort of parameterize what kind of stories am I going to see? What will the mix of stories look like? Or within a story, what kinds of trade-offs will I make between, for example, human interest and data, or context and brevity? Because these are really the kinds of categories in which people think when they think about making, when they think about editorial judgment. So listen, thank you, and I'm sorry about the glitches. I want to thank all of my partners over the years, and students, of course, and especially our wonderful funders, Knight Foundation, National Science Foundation, and Google. Thank you.